Does it not feel that there's more heat on you to get all of that work done in a shorter amount of time? And if you were rushing to get work done, is that going to affect the quality of it?
Welcome to the meeting room. I'm Holly Patrick, and today we're diving into a topic that's making headlines across industries: the 4-day working week. Today, to explore this topic with me, I've got the lovely guest, Lizzie Eaton, who is founder and director of Oddity Events. Lizzie, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Holly.
So we're going to dive into the 4-day working week, which isn't a particularly new concept, but it is growing in popularity. So first, let's gather your thoughts.
I have a mixed opinion about it, Holly. I work a 4-day week myself because I have a 1-year-old and he doesn't go to nursery on one of the working days. My team have a 5-day working week, and they have the option to condense their working week into 4 days once a month. So there's that sort of flexi leave option. I feel like I need a bit of convincing about making the 4-day working week a permanent thing at Oddity. I think there is some challenges around, especially running a small business, around who is going to cover who. If everyone's off on the same day, we have to be so reactive as well, and our clients don't necessarily work the same hours or schedule that we will if we were to condense our hours to a 4-day week. So for me, I need a bit more convincing about it, and at the moment I'm steering towards it's a no, because I don't think it's sensible for my business.
That's a really interesting take, though. So obviously you are founder and director of Oddity Events. So you write the rules, basically. You know, you can enforce them and you can change them whenever you want. You've just said there that you work a 4-day working week because of childcare issues.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are many, many working parents and guardians out there that have the same responsibilities. So let's just focus on that, what that looks like for you in practice. So you work a 4-day working week. You also use the term there, compressed hours.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still doing the same amount of work that you would do over 5 days in 4 days? Or are you quite strict about?
No, I'm not strict at all, Holly.
Mm.
I am my own worst enemy. So I technically don't work on Thursdays, and I keep that time very precious. It's time that I have with my kid. And the thing is that as a business owner, you never switch off anyway, even on the weekend. So I wouldn't expect anyone to follow the same patterns as I do. But because it doesn't work for me because of various things, like being a business owner, having other responsibilities at home, things like that, the 4-day week just is there in principle, but in practice it doesn't really exist, because my best time to work is on a Friday night between 9 p.m. and midnight with a bottle of wine. Like, I feel like regardless of what my official hours are, it's always bleeding into sort of not very healthy hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is an argument you hear a lot around the 4-day working week about who enforces it, whether it's self-enforced, as the employee, or as an employer, and you say, don't answer emails, I don't want you to email me back, don't pick up the phone. Or how does that look? Because there isn't really one set model, is there, for how the 4-day working week should work. But of course, there is evidence and a growing argument that it makes employees more productive in those 4 days than spreading out their jobs across those 5 days. So I guess my question to you is, if one of your team members came to you, and how big is your team now?
There's 5 of us.
So there's 5 of you, and let's say 1 or 2 of them came to you and said, I really want to work a 4-day working week, and they made a fantastic argument about how they'd be more productive, how they could fit in maybe as much time, maybe as much work in those 5 days than they could as in the 4 days. What would your response be? What would you have to hear from them to say, okay, let's give this a go?
I would need to know their intentions for if something came up on one of their accounts or one of their projects. Like, would they be willing to be on call? How would they support the team if they were given different hours or a different setup? We actually do have that situation with one of our team members who works fully remotely. And again, I was skeptical at first about this, but she's actually proved me wrong. She came to me with a proposal and said, actually, I spend so much time on the train, I can be more focused if I'm able to be fully remote. And she has done that. So I feel like I would be open-minded to having that conversation, but I would need to know what they expect the implications on the rest of the team will be without me having to mediate that. And then secondly, we're talking about productivity, but is that not, a sort of secondary to the pressure of getting all the work done across a smaller number of hours? Does it not feel that there's more heat on you to get all of that work done in a shorter amount of time. And if you were rushing to get work done, is that going to affect the quality of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there's an argument though that, if we had a 6-day working week, which, formally, not even that long ago that was the norm.
Right.
We could always find work to do in those days. So we have a 5-day working week and we can always fill them. But if it was 4 and we got used to having the 3-day weekend, that would just become the norm, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think we would need to learn new habits. I think, do you know what it is as well, Holly? Is that I am a chronic procrastinator. And so if I didn't have more time to do my work, it just would never get done. I need, to be fair though, I do need that extra pressure. I need like a hard deadline to get work done. But I don't like the idea of it being a rush. But I do think if it was just something that, I know that the government there's a campaign to basically put this into place for everyone, right? I would need to see an example of an events company who is doing it well, and I know there are some. I think I would just need to see more examples. I would just be so nervous that, especially as a small business, I'm the owner, I'm responsible for the output of my team. If something was going to go a bit haywire, it would be up to me to solve it. So I just don't think, for me at least, a 4-day working week in the sense of, how we're speaking about it, I don't think it would work.
You were honest at the start. You said you needed some more convincing, and I'm absolutely not here to try and convince you.
What do you want from me, Holly?
I work a 5-day working week. I'm not an employer. I'm an employee, and there is with you as an event planner in the events industry. I'm an events industry journalist, so there is always events to cover. There's always work to be done. But I wonder from a recruitment point of view. So there's 5 people at Oddity now, and I know that you weathered the pandemic and you've been growing the business, which is absolutely fantastic. Do you think that if you said we are a 4-day working week company, you might get, when you are hiring, the talent that you might get applying for that would be more than if you were the standard 5-day? Is there anything in that, do you think?
I think there is, Holly. I think there is. I would be interested to see, if there was anybody who could share data with me about the quality of applicants around, different work setups and things like that. But actually, Holly, I think because our offer is already quite attractive, if I don't mind saying myself, I don't worry about that so much. And also, I feel like I don't want to have to recruit people because the team is stretched to capacity because we've gone to a 4-day work week. Are we doing more recruitment because we've limited our capacity? Is that a sensible business decision? That's another question for you. Like, who fits the bill of this? Is it, we have to reduce the amount of work that we take on because we are reducing our capacity? Or are we becoming more productive because we're getting better talent? It's a more attractive offer. I think it's going to be a catch-22.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like it's going to just have to be trial and error, and it's not going to be one model that fits everyone, because in a different industry that only does work, let's say, the Monday to Friday 9 to 5, which is not the events industry by any means, that works for them. I have heard about different models though, so you're a team of 5, and that not everybody would work, let's say, Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday, so people have different days off in the week. So you still have a team at Oddity that works 5 days a week client facing,
right?
But for the employees, it's only those 4 days a week. So I think there's something in that, to be honest.
But again, that's for me to have to mediate. If someone says I want Wednesday, but then somebody else says, but I want Wednesday, like there's just more. It's just more admin and more organising that we would have to do to make sure that we were properly covered. But I do like the idea of it being staggered. But like I said, the team does have the opportunity, or the option at least, no, I shouldn't say opportunity, the option to condense their hours. But what I'm finding is that they aren't doing it as often as I would like them to. So they're showing me themselves that they aren't bothered by a 4-day working week because they're just not using that benefit. They do sometimes, but I think it's for their preferences. What I'm seeing is that they don't mind a 5-day working week.
So the benefit that you're talking about is having that flexibility of choosing when to work.
Exactly. And also, I feel like I'm not going to be a complete ball buster. If somebody wants to have some time off, or they want to have a flexible working request, I'm open to it. Like you said, I just need to see a proposal about how they think it's going to work for the business. And if it makes sense for my business, by all means. But I need to be the one to make that call.
Yeah, and of course, so just going back to what you were saying about one of your team asked to work from home remotely full time, and you needed that, needed the strong case for it. But I guess, and if you have that, it can also be look at us, we're inventing the concept of the 4-day working week here and how it can work in principle. But the probationary period, I'm thinking as well, like when you start a new role, you normally have a 3 or 6 month probationary period to see if you fit the role, to see how it's going and the team culture. And I guess you could have that with the 4-day working week model, and if it's not working, if your work isn't very good or you're slacking off, or you can see that your staff aren't doing what they should be doing, we're all back in 5 days a week kind of thing.
Are you going to be the one to tell everybody? So I hope you've all enjoyed your 4-day working week, but sorry, we're going back to 5 days. Bye.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm
if you want to
not
bring
going
me
to do
in
that,
as a
Holly.
consultant,
I would not survive the next day.
Yeah.
The next day, I couldn't do that. I would want to make sure that any decision that I'm making is one that I don't have any regrets on. Also, as a millennial and somebody who worked in an office every single day pre-pandemic, I think it's kind of different for us because we maybe have a sense of resentment towards some of the young people who are coming into the workplace now and have this expectation of loads of flexibility, but we need to unlearn that. Us millennials need to unlearn the toxic cultures and habits that we grew up with when we were creating our careers. I think there is a sense of, well, in my day we never did that, so maybe I'm blocking my own mind in that sense because we were just never exposed to it ourselves.
Yeah, no, I've heard this a lot and I've seen this a lot. It's that mentality of you have to earn your stripes. No matter how you earn them, you're earning your stripes.
I'm so like that.
You think you're like that?
Yeah.
Do you think
I
that's
hope
because
not in a toxic way?
I can't imagine.
Very much like, no, you're not going to go from 0 to 100 without sort of crossing off these things that you need to learn to be good at your job, to be a good event manager. And sometimes that just takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to learn on the job. But also that sounds like career progression through merit and experience as well. And, someone that you can trust in that role. But do you think for the younger workforce that are coming in as well, that level of expected flexibility is around, they might have finished their studies in COVID. So traditionally everybody's sat in the classroom doing their exams and all of a sudden you're allowed to do them at home on your laptop. So that they've proved to themselves and society that they can work from anywhere. But we're catching up with that.
I think so. But in the events industry in particular, I think there is a real need for exposure to watching somebody who might be, a bit of a stalwart in the industry like me, just having that exposure of shadowing them that you can't learn from behind a computer or from, not being together as much. And I think I worry that if it was going to be a 4-day working week for us, what would the next thing that would be expected of me be? And I just don't know where the limits would be. And for me, I need to keep my business sustainable. It needs to be profitable. Otherwise, no one's getting paid, no one's getting their bonus. So for me to make those kind of decisions, I would want to make sure that it wasn't just another thing that is like a fad and, that's what's expected. It gets put into place. And then 6 months or a year later, it's another thing that happens, which makes it even harder to run a business.
It sounds like it's just going to be an extra headache for you at the moment with everything else that's going on.
Oh, no. I hope I'm not being neggy.
I don't think you're being neggy. I think there's absolutely an element of, realism about this. And I think maybe if you were a multi-billion conglomerate and you had like a huge staff of consultants and HR as well, it's probably easier to enforce these things and you can bring in these consultants and show you the case studies. But like you say, you are founder director and you've got a brilliant team of 5, but you are event planners and that's your daily bread and butter. That's what you have to do. That's what you should be focusing on. So I understand that. We spoke a bit about at the beginning, you do a 4-day working week for childcare reasons and so spend some quality time with your boy. If other employees or even employers are coming at the 4-day working week with this in mind, that they think the only solution to lessening their stress around childcare is the 4-day working week, I wonder if you can throw out any other sort of solutions, advice, metrics about how you can be a business owner or a working parent and also still have that quality time.
It's a hard question. I think for me, I'm lucky enough that I'm able to afford childcare. My husband is the sort of main breadwinner for our family right now, and he puts in a lot to allow me to be an entrepreneur. to try and grow a business which is successful, but hopefully, you know, in 20 years' time, we'll both be living a life of luxury and living on a yacht and somewhere. I'm lucky enough that I'm able to afford this lifestyle, this career path. I think for some mums, it's going to be much harder and even harder to have the flexibility of a 4-day week. So I don't take for granted that my position is one of flexibility in the first instance because I've created that for myself. I would say that the way to strike a balance, to create balance for yourself, is to take stock of your support network. Thank God mine includes my team of employees who are just next level, so supportive. They even say, Lizzie, I think you need to take a break, or Lizzie, I think that you should probably be focusing on this strategic thing rather than worrying about these name badges. They just call me out on things and they keep me accountable in the best possible way. That's my main support network. My mum doesn't live too close to us. She lives in Scotland. So I'm able to create my own sense of flexibility because my team is so trustworthy. The rest of our support network has just taken a lot of work to establish. And I think there is something to be said around not feeling the stigma of having to outsource childcare. There is so much pressure on mums to spend time with their child, but not too much time because you might create a rod for your own back. Go to work, but don't go to work all the time because you know your child might grow up with absentee parent syndrome, whatever it's called. Like there's just so much pressure. And I think we need to be more honest with ourselves about what works. And I'm still learning. My child is 14 and a half months. I'm still learning what balance looks like. But, you know, as I said, I'm just so lucky that I'm able to create and trial and error for myself, whereas some mums don't have that. So I would say to other people, to strike a balance between working and being a parent and having a life, don't be afraid to outsource.
Yeah, and give yourself a break as well.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself. So obviously, that's your circumstance, and you know you've recognised that that's not the circumstance for everybody. You are a business owner, so what, you know, I don't know if your team have families or if they're starting families or whatever it is, but in the future, if they do want to do that, what is going to be your line to them? Because obviously you've experienced this flexibility firsthand. And is that something you're going to pass down to your team?
Absolutely. You can't not. I think there is, you know, we're talking about the 4-day working week. I think for me, I want to be as flexible as I can be anyway. So do I need that officially in writing? Probably not, because I would like for my team to know that if they needed more support from me, if they had a particular thing that they needed to work through that required more time, I would be so open to talking to them about it. It's just that having it all set in stone like that, which makes me a bit nervous, because then if I need to change my mind, I think it would be difficult to do that. Or if they ever wanted to start family, I'm speaking from experience that I wouldn't have been able to juggle both if I didn't have that flexibility. And I want for them to be able to do their jobs well. And if it means trusting them with their own schedules, their own timelines of the day, then so be it. I think I've had to learn a lot to be comfortable with letting go and just letting things run without my input. Because frankly, I'm a bit unhelpful now because I'm just not involved in the day-to-day anymore, which is the right place for me to be as a business owner. They don't need me getting stuck into any of the nitty-gritty. So for me, having to go off on maternity leave, not very long, only for 12 weeks, it was the perfect timing for me to put some boundaries in place for myself and put more trust in the team. And they've completely earned that trust. So if they needed, for whatever reason, whether it was starting a family or another personal reason, or they wanted to explore a side hustle or something, so long as it wasn't competitive, then I would support that.
Right.
Like, one of my team did the Fast Forward 15 mentoring. You know, I gave her the time to go off and do that. And for me, it wasn't, well, you better make the time up at the end of the day, because I knew it was going to be so valuable for her. And that value would then bleed into what we do at Oddity. So if I'm able to be supportive and that helps them feel, you know, comfortable and safe at Oddity, then yeah, great.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is that as long as it's an initiative that works for everyone at Oddity, you know, not just the employees, not just you as the employer. It has to work for everybody, no matter what that is. If it has that, then let's go forward and go with that.
Yeah.
I know we're talking specifically about the 4-day working week, but in that comes flexibility. And I hope you don't mind. I just want to pick up on, you said you went on maternity leave for 12 weeks.
12 weeks, yeah.
3 months.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask why you didn't take a year?
I thought I could do it sooner. I thought I could come back to work sooner. And it was silly. I've always been so ambitious and so driven, and Oddity is my first baby, apart from the dog. I really thought that I could treat it in the same way that I did pre-baby. I didn't realise how physiologically, emotionally, psychologically, there's so much change. I was naive, and I think if I could do it again, I would give myself more time to be at home. But again, even though I was on maternity leave for 12 weeks, I still had to run the payroll. I still had to pay every invoice that came through to suppliers. Still had to check in on the team, because I wasn't just going to abandon them and be like, bye, see you in 12 weeks. That was never going to be the case. So I say I was off, but I wasn't really. But in hindsight, I think I felt a lot of pressure to keep new business coming, and we had a bit of a tricky year last year because we had loads of postponements due to the election, things like that, because that's what we specialize in with political engagement and things. So I think I felt a bit panicked that if I wasn't at work, we were all gonna the pipeline would have just disappeared and there wouldn't be any business to go back to. So I put this pressure on myself that nobody else was putting on me. But yeah, now looking back, and I haven't had a proper break since before the baby was born. I think I should have been a bit more sensible, or listened to people when they said, that's not going to be enough time for you.
So people were saying that to you. I imagine there are so many other women and mothers in this industry that resonate with what you've just said. That feeling of I have to go back and prove myself and prove that I can do it to other people and also to yourself as well.
Yeah, and I've got to be honest that when I did come back to work, I was working for 3 days a week, and it was total chaos because I felt stretched so thinly that we wasn't doing enough work in those 3 days because it just wasn't enough time. And then the time that I had at home with my son, I found myself becoming really angry and resentful because I was like, I just want to answer this email. And he was 4 or 5 months old. It's not his fault. But I found myself just trying to juggle impossibly. But now that I've gone to 4 days, I feel much more in control because I'm able to look forward to my day at home with Ali and put all work aside. I know that the team's got it. And I'm just able to, just having that extra day, I can fit more stuff in. I can be more organised. I just think it's made the world of difference going from 3 days to 4. I never thought I would say I need to do more work, but having more days at work has really, really helped me mentally and just accept my role as a business owner and a mum. It's been a tricky, tricky journey, but a really good one. Just hard and very eye-opening, and I've just become a completely different person now. And I think before, I've always been quite an impatient, not particularly empathetic, but since having a baby, I'm just much more conscious of people's personal circumstances and hopefully just being a bit more open-minded. I just want to keep that in the front of my mind all the time and not expect my team to have the same relationship to Oddity that I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think really interesting point there that you just mentioned having a child has made you more empathetic and more considerate of what other people are going through. And we talk a lot in this industry, and rightfully so, about big issues and big topics that people suffer outside their day jobs. We can't just leave our personal lives at home. But I think we do have to recognise that sometimes it's really hard for others who aren't in those circumstances to understand what's going on. We can't all be campaigning for the same sort of issues because we just don't grasp it. We don't get it. But I think it's hopefully conversations like this that open it up and say, you're not alone. And I'm sure there were many times where you did feel alone in that.
Absolutely. And if I may say, I don't think the events industry, the childcare system, the education system, the working system, it is not built for mums or parents. I think I'm very nervous about Ali going to school and us having to provide, or us having to find wraparound care, because who finishes work at 3 p.m., even if it is a 4-day working week? You know, I think I'm really nervous about that. And I just want to make sure that I harness that nervousness and build that into a culture that I'm trying to create at Oddity, build the understanding that the systems aren't set up for us into what I hope will be a supportive and positive culture at Oddity.
Amazing. And that would be wonderful to see. I guess then on that note, what do you want to say to the industry about being more supportive of working mums?
Stop holding events before the school run. Stop holding events during the school run. I think we just need to be very realistic with the mental load of parents, especially people who are having their first child like me, that we're not able to operate in the same way, but we're just as passionate, we're just as experienced. We just need an hour or so at 9 p.m. rather than answering an email straight away at 4 p.m. You know, it just give me that little bit of extra breathing space. And actually my clients really understand that, because I have to be upfront with them. Like, sorry, I'm not working on Thursday, but I can come back to you on Friday or Monday. And just being upfront in the first instance, I think, has really helped. But I would never be like that before. I would always be like, I have to respond straight away, super reactive. And that's what we are in our jobs anyway. But I think we just need to manage expectations, I think. And there is a sense that you know, the events industry is losing that hustle hard culture, and people are a bit more understanding that we're only human, we're not superhuman. So yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know what my message would be as in a concise way, Holly, to answer your question, but I think it's more awareness that it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're driving that awareness. So thank you. Back to the podcast topic though. And
We've digressed big time.
No, this has been so insightful, and it comes into it, doesn't it? Because people want the 4-day working week for that element of flexibility, whatever they choose to do on that extra day off, you know. And for a lot of people, it's not an extra day off. It is childcare, or it's doing something else, or looking after elderly parents or something like that. So it's just having that flexibility. Have I done anything to convince you that the 4-day working week is a positive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have. But when you said we can always change our minds again, I think absolutely not.
Okay.
If you're going to do it, you've got to stick with it. You can't say we're going to do 4 days. Oh, actually, we're going back to 5 days. I think anyone considering it needs to have done their homework big time about whether that's going to work for the business or their clients or their customers or whatever. I need to still do a little bit more looking into it. One of my team members is really pro a 4-day working week, which
Yep.
I can totally understand. I get it. I completely get it. But it's just, there's more to it than that.
Lizzie, I think that's a good place to end it. Thank you so much for coming on the meeting room today.
Thanks for having me.